I'm Maynard with First and Foremost, and I'm going to show you step by step how to build this shed. Today we're going to be installing the dimensional shingles. So let's get started and make it happen, Captain. Today we're going to be working with GAF Timberline architectural shingles. So we're going to open up one of our packs here and see exactly what we're working with. Before we start nailing shingles, we must pop all of our lines so that the install goes perfectly straight and we know exactly where to lay our shingles. And the GAF Timberline shingle comes in at about 39¼ inches long, and it is 13¼ inches tall. Now, one more thing you're going to need to know about the shingle is the actual part that is visible is 5 5/8 to a line that may be kind of hard to see right there, but there is a defined line of what stays visible and where the next shingle starts. We are going to be using an 1.5" overhang, being that I am going to install PVC trim coil to the outside of these fascias. I'm going to simply hang my tape measure over an 1.5" from the edge of our 1x6, and I will mark 13¼ which is the height of our shingle. Now we'll mark that at an uppermost point that we can, and also down here at the bottom to where we can pop a nice straight line. So we mark 13¼ there, 13¼ there, and then pop a line. So here at the bottom, we will hang our tape measure over an 1.5" as well, and we will mark 13¼ the same we did on the side. And as you can see, I have a nail installed exactly on that crow's foot. And when you make a crow's foot, make a very pronounced crow's foot so you know exactly where that point is. Now we will do the same exact thing on the other side. One more time, we will do the far edge, and then we are almost ready to start nailing shingles. We remember earlier we had a 5 5/8 reveal on the bottom of the shingle. Now we're going to use a little bit different number, just something a little easier to work with, and we're going to call it 5.5. From the bottom red line, I am going to mark up 22 inches. And 22 inches is just 5.5 4 times. So 5.5, 11, 16.5, 22. So we're going to mark 22 inches. So every 4 lines, I will make sure that my shingle is perfectly lined with that line, and then continue on with the defined line to ensure that my shingles stay as straight as possible. So we've installed 2 nails here, similarly to what we did on the perimeter lines, at our 22 inch and our 44 inch mark, and pop that a couple of times. To get started, we will have 5 steps. So if you take 40 inches and you divide that by 5, you get roughly 8 inches. So our first step is to cut 8 inches off of the whole shingle, and you really want to cut this nice and straight, as you will be butting a factory edge to that cut edge that you make. So if you don't feel confident, you can use some type of scribe or anything, put it right up against your mark, and we have our nice factory edge here from our other shingle, and simply cut down, and you are done. Remove this shingle. Now you have step number 1, which is our 8-inch piece. You have step number 4, which is our whole shingle with 8 inches removed. And now we will cut another whole shingle, but this one we will mark it at 16 inches. And don't be scared to cut through that. It's what we are supposed to do. So now you have a 16-inch piece, which is step 2. and you have a piece of whole shingle which has 16 inches removed, which is step 3. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and a whole shingle is considered step 5. So we will work ourselves down from 5 all the way to 1, and then we can continue that process. And as we come to the beginning again, we will do that in succession until we reach the top. To get started with laying the shingles, we are now going to use the lines that we popped around the perimeter. So these are called our starter lines, and what we're going to do there is we're going to install a shingle underneath of the shingle that's going to be visible, because when you connect one shingle to the next shingle, if you don't put a shingle underneath, where these two shingles join would let water in. So we are going to have a shingle that is underneath this visible shingle with a break that is not in the same location as the break here. Now ideally you want about 6 inches difference in between the breaks, but with our system that we have here today, we're going to have about 12 inches away from our break, which is going to really ensure that we don't have any water that can be blown and make it to a point where they could actually affect and reach our raw wood. So we're going to install a shingle underneath like so, and then when you put this shingle on top that's visible, you can see here that it is protected by the hidden shingle and will send the water that is coming in through this joint right out and right over the roof. So to ensure that our break is 12 inches away, we will run our side shingle, our lower shingle first, and we have our side line and our lower line. So we are going to install this shingle to our lower line, and we are going to put the color side up, and you literally just line this shingle and you touch it to the line that goes up the side. Now once you have it there, you can simply attach nails in our center portion here. You don't want to get too low or too high. And we will install 5 nails per shingle. We will now flip this over, and we can line this up on this vertical line here and slide it all the way down until we touch the bottom of the shingle that we installed first. So they are perfectly in line with each other. And then again, nail 5 nails right in the center of this nail in line. Just like so. And you can just go ahead, if you'd like, and finish that out all at once. You can go all the way up while you're in one mode. You can also run actually you can run it all the way across, and you can finish all the perimeter at once if you'd like to. We're going to kind of do it as we go. While you're nailing these shingles, it is very important to try to stay in that line, but there is about a 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch point where the shingle is actually doubled up. You would really like your nails to fall in that little area right there, because it grabs the meat of both shingles and does not allow this to slide down or this to slide up, and gives you the maximum grabbing power and sustainability. Now again, these outer edges here are doing 2 things. At the bottom, where the 2 joints meet each other, it does not let water get in of that obvious break where the 2 shingles join each other. And on the side, it gives us a nice place to cut to on our finish out and line our starter pieces up on the side, so that when the job is complete, you see a nice visual straight line. If you are not accustomed to installing shingles, you may not want to walk this close to the edge, as it can get slippery, especially if it's before you've installed any shingles. So don't be ashamed if you have to use a step ladder or some form of ladder to run at least a couple rows to where you feel safe and are able to stand on the roof itself. Now that we have our starter shingle installed, we are going to start with step 5, which is the whole shingle. And we will just lay that on top. And we want to make sure that's in line with our chalk line we popped here on the bottom, and also perfectly flush with the outer edge of the starter that goes up the side. And once you have that point, you can put 2 nails right here at the beginning, really close to that line, one close to the edge, one about 4 inches away. And then you can nail about 4 more nails, skipping a nice space of about 12 inches after your 4-inch nail. And I like to put 2 on my edge because that edge there is what's going to receive all the wind. So now that we have step 5 in, here comes the importance of the nailing pattern and why you really need to make sure that you stay about 16 inches with that 3rd nail. Because as you remember, we took 8 inches off of step 4. So you will line step 4 on that defined line that we referenced earlier, slide it to the edge, and again, we're going to nail that shingle in the same exact fashion as the first. We're going to put 1 nail on the very edge, right above the white line, and another one about 4 inches away. And then skip about 12 inches, install 3 more nails with 1 up top. And what that does is it leaves no nail within 6 inches of this break. And over the long term, that's going to be very important from preventing water going into your roof. Now we were able to line that up on that defined line. And as soon as that is done, you can immediately go to step 3. Step 3 is the piece that we cut 16 inches off of the whole sheet. And this was our remainder. So again, you line this up with our defined line of where our shingle stops and starts, and just slide it over to the edge of our starter shingle here to make sure we're nice and straight. And once that is, which we are now, same exact pattern. 1 nail, 4 inches away, skip about 12 inches, put 2 more, and 1 up top for good measure. That will ensure that there are no nails close to our joint, and we are properly attached to withstand against any hard winds or storm winds that might come. Now line 4, we do the same thing, line it up to our defined edge, as well as our starter shingle over here. Now this one is so small that we will not be able to nail 4 inches away. So what we will do is nail 1 on the very edge, 1 above it, 1 on the very edge over here, and 1 above it. That is our step 2, which is our 16-inch shingle. Now, very last, we are now making it to the point we are at our first 22-inch line. And this will be our step 1 shingle, which is approximately 8 inches long. You're not going to line this up on the defined line. It's actually going to overhang about 1/8 of an inch. We are going to line that up with our 22-inch line and the edge of our starter shingle. Put 2 nails there in the middle and 1 above for good measure. We really want to deter against that wind or any storm ripping our shingles up, as the edges are going to, be receiving all of the elements. The shingles out here in the middle, being that they're attached together, the wind kind of just slides right over them. But these edges, being that they're hanging, will receive the brunt of the force. Okay, so now we have our 5 steps installed to start with, and this is where we begin to run whole shingles. Now that we have our first 5-step stair ladder installed, we already have 2 of our reversed laid starter shingles. We will now be able to start a row of full shingles. We'll line this up on our 13¼ inch line, nail 4 nails across the middle section, and we will make sure that we skip a good portion right here, nail about 4 inches from the end and on the very end. And that will let us run the next shingle. Then we will have no nail close to the break in shingles or where the two sheets meet each other. All right, so we will butt this whole shingle here into our number 2, which is our 16-inch piece. 2 nails very close, 4 nails right there. So 5 or 6 nails is fine. You technically don't need to put 6. It's just something that I like to do for a little extra security. Now we are attaching our line that is to coincide with our 22-inch chalk line. As you can see there, we are perfectly in line. Have those 2 nails right there. And now we are at the point where we will get to start our stair portion again. So we will start with number 5, slide down to our defined reveal line, and then onwards and upwards with step 4 through 1. All right, so now we are finally, I think, high enough where we are going to not have any more steps in our ladder. Just always remember to be very cognizant of where you place that nail. And if you're not sure, you don't have to have a tape measure out and be measuring every single piece and just worried, oh by golly. If you happen to have a nail there, just lift the tab up and caulk on top of it and put it back down. Or you can even pull the nail, lift this shingle up, caulk underneath, and press it until the caulking comes through the protrusion. Or, to keep matters even simpler, if you just have the next step in front of you, you can literally go ahead and place it, and then you know exactly where you're not allowed to nail. So you can keep your nails away, and it gives you a good visual reference, and we have no nails within 6 inches of our break. We will need to check and make sure that we have enough coverage with our cap shingle, which I don't think we will. Nope, it's not quite enough. So we will have to put one more line. And now this last shingle, if we get to the top here, you're not going to be able to nail into the nailing line because you're going to be nailing right down through the ridge and could possibly create a gap or a hole that would cause a leak. So you still want to nail into the wood sheathing of the roof. So you can come a little bit lower and just nail right through the double shingle, because those all will be covered up by the cap shingle later. Don't get too low, make sure you're high enough where your cap shingle will cover that. So making it to this other side over here, we're kind of going to have to do the exact same thing we did starting at the very beginning. We will lay our bottom shingle first. You notice I didn't quite take it out to the edge, just really, really close. I will line that up on our red line. And then we will run the side over top of it. Slide it down our vertical line here on the side until this shingle touches the bottom of our starter. Once we have reached that point, which we are now, 5 nails or 6 right up the nailing line. And now we will be able to continue that all the way up the roof. And our starter shingles will be complete. Now this is the most time-consuming part of the roof install, and honestly, very, very important, as you do not want to finish out with a very, very small piece. So we have our position right here, and I will always double check to make sure, and here it is, perfect example, right where we're starting with. Our shingle is about 2 inches short from making it all the way to the end of the roof. Now we would not want to finish out with that small of a piece. there would be no way to properly nail that shingle. So we will find out where our break is because we know where our previous shingle ended, and we see the break in our starter shingle. So we will pick a point that is about 6 inches away from our break here in the starter shingle. So I will make a little mark right there. Grab that with my hand. We can flip this over and just cut it straight down. Want that to be nice straight. We'll save that for later as we may need that for a finish out. Now we install this shingle here on our red line, and our break is well away from the break on the starter. Now we will nail this with very little nails. We want to make sure that our next sheet from over top does not break in that same area. So we will grab a couple more whole shingles. And now we will cut our finish out. So we have our position right here, and to simply lay this upside down, slide it to the position where you are perfectly flush with your outer shingle, and just grab that right there at the position where you would like to cut. Cut that straight down. And when we remove that shingle and place it here, butting nice and tight to our last laid shingle, we will be perfectly flush with our starter outside and nice and tight to our lower shingle here. But most importantly, we will not have a 2-inch piece or 4-inch piece very close to the edge with not very much to nail to and susceptible to wind damage. So now nothing really changes. We start with another whole shingle and we will go to our second row. And as you can see, we are nowhere near our break on that lower section. We are also still very, very far, approximately 10 inches away, which I would say at least a 6-inch minimum there. I would really like 8 inches away from any break. And also our next piece or our next row's finish out is approximately 10 inches, which should suffice and be exactly what we need to not be too close to the edge and have our shingle susceptible to wind damage. Now we saved this piece from earlier, which was cut off of our first row. So you can do the same exact thing, not to waste as much shingle. Line that up flush to the edge there. Lay that down, put a mark, cut straight down, bend, and remove. Line that up here. We are nice and pretty with our edge over there. 2 nails in the line, 1 nail's up top for good measure. Now these shingles will heat up and attach with just a little bit of sun contact. So it can be 40 degrees, 50 degrees, even down to 30 degrees. As long as they have sun, this tar will be activated underneath and help attach to the previous shingle. Obviously, the hotter it is, they also will activate. But at some point, usually typically around 88, 89 degrees Fahrenheit, you do not want to walk on shingles while you are doing the install, because it is so hot and the tar just retains all of that heat that you can actually scar and remove some of the rocks and seashells that are used to make the color pattern and protective layer completely off of the shingle. So at very, very high temperatures, you may not want to do your install. Just line me up right nice and tight to that shingle there, just so where I got a little visual of that previous sheet. Mark a little mark, and then move it up to where it's a little bit more comfortable to cut. Cut that straight down, save that starter, and here we go. Nice. One thing you'll notice that I always, when I save my shingles, which we don't need that piece, I do not lay them this way. That tar is heat activated, so if you leave it like that, it will stick and stain your roof. So I always When I save my shingles, I always put them upside down and then just sit them in there and let them hang out for a little while. I'll come back for them later. If you guys are in the middle of any of your projects, albeit shed and or something different, and have questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to us in our email in the description below and or our Facebook page first and foremost. We'd be glad to answer any questions that we could and be of any help possible. So now, we have purchased here, and I'll show you the packaging in a second, is the actual hip and ridge caps that come with the three-dimensional brand of shingles. These do have a perforated edge that you can essentially just bend, but I like just to take them, and you can just line about 3 or 4 of them up in a row and just literally cut down that perforated edge. You can cut it over and over and over until you get all the way through and they cleanly separate. If I were to start my cap install from the driveway side, as I would come across and these would all nail down, you would always see that reveal and notice that over and over and over again. But if you magically just flip that around, and as you install, cosmetically, when those all dry down, from those main point of views, they all look like one shingle. You cannot see that butt end, and it's just a little bit prettier. Albeit, but you won't have this little whirly bird sticking out there. Cut it cleanly, please. So I will hold this cap flush to the end of my starter strip, and I will nail 2 nails on both sides of my cap. Then I will go all the way to the very far end, and I may, being that I have some help up here, or not, just put a tack in here, because this actually can stay here, and I'll show you why in a little bit. And then take your string line, hook it on to the end of the shingle here, and I always like to, again, pop my line on the side that is most visible to everyone, including myself. So I will hook this right here in line with the overhang. Hold that string line really low. Come all the way to this side over here. Connect it to that same very edge without pulling it ungodly tight, and pop me a nice red line to where I can follow and keep my caps looking very, very nice. Be proud of yourself if you've made it this far. This is not an easy job. It's super hot. You're always on an angle. Either your feet hurt, your back hurt, but it is something that you can take your time doing. You get your underlayment on. Your underlayment can withstand the elements for up to 1 month. So if you're building your shed, you can take your time. You don't have to finish the roof all in one day. Like we did here, you can do one, you could actually just paper it one day, shingle one side one day, shingle the other side the next weekend if you had to. So take your time and do it at your own pace, because there is something to say for doing the work yourself and being happy and proud of what you did. And you can look at it when it's all over with and say, man, I did that right there, because you can. Line that up right there on the red line, 2 nails, fold that over, 2 nails. So you only have to worry about just the one side lining up, and the other side will automatically line up all by itself. All right. So we need one more cap. Okay, now when you get to the very, very end, you are going to run into a scenario just as we have here, and this is on every roof. There is no other way to do this. You are going to get to where you are at a point where you have to have one shingle on top of the other. So what we do there is we work, and I probably should have showed you before I nailed that down, but our shingle that was here from popping the line, we just added one more shingle to it to where our reveal on both sides is less than one complete shingle like this. So now our last cap, we will just cut off all of the black area or green, depending on which brand you use, and I will get rid of that like so. We just cut it slam off. Cut it slam off there, and at the very end of these two shingles, you just add one cap directly over top, covering that joint, and install 4 nails, one in each corner. One last step that I've heard numerous roofers argue over throughout the years is you need to caulk on top of these nails right here, and I do think that's a good idea. So these are the only nails on the entire roof that should be visible or subject to the elements. So it is not a bad idea to get some color matched caulk, exterior grade obviously, and just put a dab over these 4 nails and kind of smear it down just a little bit to protect any water from getting through that nail hole. That'll do it, guys, for the shingle install on the shed today. But make sure you tune in next time as we're going to tackle the front door install. And as always, if you haven't hit that like and subscribe button, make sure you do it now so you don't miss out on any of it. And until next time, you guys have a great day.